We also have a number of members who are participating remotely via Teams. And the reason that I'm looking up for those people who are watching in is because that's where the screen is, so it looks a bit strange, but I have to keep on doing that. Can we ensure that when people are going to speak, that they do into the microphone, and don't forget to press it on and off. And finally, if we can ensure, as always, that phones are switched off. Just before we go into the formalities of the meeting, can I just say, get in, Saints. So I'm sure, Councillor Baines, do you just want to explain what that means?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so on Saturday, Saints men's team won the 13th Challenge Cup after 13 years of not winning it. And they joined our women's team significantly, who won it for the first time in June this year. So we're the first club to hold both the men's and women's Challenge Cups, and our council was really pleased to be able to work with the club to organise a homecoming on Monday. We're only, I think, the second council and borough to organise a parade for a successful women's team. I think Man City were the first, and I say that through gritted teeth, in 2019. The women's team took part in a parade, so we were very proud to do it on Monday to give our women's team the homecoming they deserve, and congratulations to the men's team as well. Great news for the town, great news for the city region.
And endorsed by Trudy as well. She's delighted at the news. Item 1 is apologies for absence. Trudy, are there any apologies?
Thank you, Metro Mayor. Yes, I've received apologies from Mayor Joanne Anderson, Councillor Ian Mayer, Asif Hamid MBE, Emily Spurrell, Councillor Grovecut and Councillor Hardy. Paul Corcoran's here today for Asif, and Councillor John Fairclough is here today for Councillor Mayer. And I can also confirm that watching the remote session is Councillor Liam Robinson, Councillor Gillian Wood, Councillor Louise Whitley, Councillor Laura Robertson-Collins, Councillor Carla Thomas, Lynn Collins and Councillor Shelley Powell. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. Any additional apologies we should be made aware of by anyone? No? Okay then, so we'll move on to item 2, which is declarations of interest. And item 3 is the minutes of the previous meeting of the Combined Authority. Are they agreed?
Agreed.
4 is the mayoral announcements segment, and today's meeting marks Catherine Fairclough's first as the new Chief Executive of the Liverpool City Region Combined Authority. So I'm sure you all, like me, would like to welcome her virtually on this occasion, unfortunately, as she's self-isolating to her first meeting. And it's only been a few short weeks since Catherine actually started, but I know we're already starting to feel the positive impact that she's making across the organisation and right the way across the whole city region. So on behalf of us all, welcome Catherine. This week marked the government's so-called Freedom Day and the easing of COVID restrictions across England. And I hate the connotations of Freedom Day, as if somehow the governments have won us a victory and presented people with something to be celebrated. Coronavirus has not yet been defeated, and we should never forget that. And it's still having a devastating impact on people's lives throughout the city region, and has amplified the injustice and inequality in society that's grown as a result of a decade of austerity. So with infection rates and hospitalisations still increasing, although it's slowed down, I believe we should err on the side of caution if we're to prevent our NHS from being overwhelmed. And now, although I'm sure we will all be glad to see the slow return to normality, I know that for many, especially those that are clinically vulnerable, and again, there are many in all of our communities, or for those who haven't yet been double jabbed, it's also a period of anxiety for them. And one area that I believe where the government has simply got it wrong is by the removal of the legal requirements to wear face coverings on public transport. And you've probably seen that I've been quite vocal about this. You know, face coverings are a proven and effective way of reducing the spread of COVID-19, which cost very little, in all honesty, are a minor inconvenience and are a way for us to be considerate to other public transport users. alongside Sadiq Khan, I was the first politician in the country to call for face coverings to be introduced, and that was back in April 2020. But while Sadiq can enforce mask wearing on all TfL services, our fragmented and deregulated transport system means that I and other metro mayors across the whole country cannot. So last week we joined forces to call on the government and transport operators to rethink and to reinstate mandatory face coverings on public transport. And so my message then and now was very simple. Wear a face mask to protect others. Over the past few weeks, I've ramped up engagement with government on a wide range of key priorities as we push ahead with our objectives that are outlined in the corporate plan that we will hopefully be passing later in today's meeting. And these include discussing my plans for devolution of the local rail network with Grant Shapps and bus deregulation with Baroness Via, highlighting our city region's unique assets that could be put that could actually put us at the vanguard of the green industrial revolution with Kwasi Kwarteng and Anne-Marie Trevelyan. And by the way, along with Mike Wharton, who's the council leader, and the chief executive, David Parr, in Halton, Minister Trevelyan's attendance at the presentation was probably one of the best that I've ever been part of, in all honesty, in the 2 and 3 decades that I've been involved in politics. So I think on behalf of myself, Mike, and you, I'd like to congratulate everybody who organised and took part in that fantastic event. And that was about decarbonisation and being net zero, of course. And along those same lines, I met with Alex Sharma, who's the president of COP26, to push for the government to recognise our preeminence on this agenda. Nowhere is advanced or has as comprehensive a plan for this than us. So the government need to recognise that. And I also have attended monthly meetings with the Vaccines Minister, Nadine Zahawi, about the impact of COVID-19 on our city region. In addition to national government, I've been meeting with colleagues from the Welsh Government to discuss ways in which we can collaborate across the border on shared prosperities, and they include transport connectivity and combating climate change, but lots and lots of other things about culture and some of the links. I also visited Leeds to meet the new Mayor of West Yorkshire, Tracy Braben, to discuss shared priorities for what's called now the new M62 mayors when it comes to reform of our buses and promoting good, fair and secure work for employers. And we're going to be doing more of that on Monday, if you watch out. And recently I joined the Shadow Chancellor and Councillor Williamson on a visit to Farm Urban, which, in all honesty, it was brilliant, wasn't it? The business is great, but the business is there and growing because it benefited from our Future Innovation Fund. And the Shadow Chancellor was blown away and went back to London looking at ways in which a future Labour government would do something similar to invest in jobs of the future whilst embedding social value within the local economy. And that's a big thing that Jeanette was able to promote to her. As ever, though, I try to get out and about and not sit in this place, Man Island. So I've been making my way across the city region to a wide range of engagements, which include a community environment project in Bootle, which was really good. And we had lots of local people, but lots of kids from All Saints School who attended that. I went to hear more about the High Net project at Innovin in Halton. A visit to the Ford transmission plant in Speak with Councillor Morgan to learn about a massive opportunity that they've got in the pipeline with the switch to electric vehicles, and we need the government to be supportive of that. I also opened our new COVID-19 vaccination hub at the Pierhead, which is doing very well. And last but not least, I visited our new trains at Kirkdale Depot. And wait until you get the chance to, and you are all invited. It's not like an exclusive party. you're all invited to go on and wait until you see these trains. Honestly, they are absolutely breathtaking. And finally, I'm now going to ask our Chief Executive, Anne Liz Dean, to lead the next item, which is on the corporate plan. But before I do, I'd like to highlight the importance of what this actually is. You know, we say things like a corporate plan. People outside might not understand it, but it incorporates all of my manifesto pledges. And hopefully people in this room will know that my first term really was focused on laying the foundations of devolution. But over the last 18 months, we've been making huge progress, and we've worked collaboratively across all of the 6 districts to respond to and begin to plan for recovery from the pandemic by supporting businesses, protecting jobs and saving lives. And, you know, we were right to do the things that we did, as difficult as they were all those months ago. Looking ahead, though, we need this new term to focus on rapidly accelerating the pace and scale of delivery. Yes, we've done okay so far. We've done well so far. But is it good enough for us? No, we need to step things up. So I'm going to look forward to working with all of the leaders and the mayor of our local authorities and our partners and stakeholders, because it's about that whole ecosystem, isn't it, to deliver that plan. And with that, I'd like to hand over to Catherine, who is on the screen now, who is with us virtually today. Catherine?
Okay, thank you, Tremaine. Thank you for the introduction. It's a great opportunity, I think, today to welcome this new corporate plan. As you've just said, it sets out that sort of collective ambition for the next 3 years. And importantly, you know, in my view, as well as setting that high level ambition, it's very deliverable, it's measurable. People can hold us to account for what's been done in that period. And your reflections on the pace of change and improvement, I think we're all hearing that loud and clear. And this plan really gives us real clarity for the next 3 years. I hope also that the way in which we report on this plan will be clear and transparent, and our communities will see the progress that we're making. And if they don't think we're making that fast enough, they'll be holding us to account as well. It's been produced in a very collaborative way with colleagues across all the local authority areas, and a big thank you to everybody for their contributions so far. But I'll hand over to Liz now, as she's taken the lead on developing this work over the past few months, and she'll talk us through some of the highlights. Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. So at the June Combined Authority meeting, I introduced a report which outlined the approach to develop the Liverpool City Region Combined Authority's corporate plan and the 5 draft priorities. And since the approval of that report, we've continued to work collaboratively with our local authority colleagues and other partners to develop the plan, which is a single document that embeds delivery of the devolved responsibilities of the Combined Authority with, as Mayor Rotherham mentioned, the delivery of the pledges and activities that were detailed in his manifesto. And it's this plan which we're asking the Combined Authority to consider for approval today. Within section 4 of the report, we highlight that the plan sets out both the purpose of the Combined Authority, which effectively is making a difference through devolution to improve the lives of our 1.6 million residents of the Liverpool City region, and that then feeds into our vision, which is a fairer, stronger, cleaner city region where no one is left behind. Section 5 of the report highlights the 5 priority areas detailed within the plan, and they are a fairer city region, a stronger city region, a cleaner city region, a connected city region, and then joining it all together, a vibrant city region. We also recognise that 3 of the biggest challenges that we face over the next 3 years are recovering from the pandemic, tackling inequality, and addressing the climate emergency. So running through the plan are 3 cross-cutting themes of recovery, equality, and sustainability. When we were developing the plan, as Catherine has mentioned, as well as making sure it reflected the Metro Mayor's pledges that he was elected on, we wanted to make sure that we were capturing the priorities of all 6 constituent local authorities. So there is a really strong read across between our priorities and all 6 areas, which shows how much opportunity there is to deliver collaboratively in the best interests of our city region and those 1.6 million residents. Both Mayor Rotherham and Catherine have touched on the importance of the deliverability of this plan. And to me, the corporate plan is our highest level delivery document. And while a lot of work has gone into producing the plan, even more work now needs to go into implementing it. And Section 5 of the report highlights this delivery focus. To put it simply, delivering the corporate plan will be everyone's responsibility, cascading down throughout the organisation. And we'll be reporting regularly on our progress through a new performance management framework, which will include reports to portfolio holders and the Combined Authority to ensure you will have much more involvement and oversight of the delivery. We will also, of course, report regular progress updates to Overview and Scrutiny Committee of the Combined Authority. We, of course, also need to make sure that we have the funding in place to deliver the priorities. So John and the team are developing the medium-term financial plan to make sure that resources follow our priorities. The report also highlights that the corporate risk register is being reviewed in light of the new plan and emphasises that equality and diversity forms a core theme of the Combined Authority's corporate plan, and the activity set out within the plan is intended to have a positive impact across all communities. Subject to your consideration and approval of the plan, it will be published on a dedicated page on the Combined Authority's website this afternoon and shared directly with our Combined Authority family and key partners and stakeholders. It will also be promoted via social media and shared with the wider media over the coming days. Our delivery against the commitments in the plan will be communicated over the next 3 years, again through the media, digital and other channels. There will be strong focus in this communication on the benefits experienced by our people, our communities, our business and our institutions in each of the 6 constituent local authorities, who will of course also be engaged in developing many of the programmes of work within the plan. I'll hand back now to Mayor Rotherham to outline the recommendations, but of course I'm happy to answer any questions anybody's got. Thank you.
Any questions for Liz? Just before we go to the recommendations, can I just reinforce what Liz said there? Thanks to all of you, all the leaders, and Mayor Anderson, who's not here, but also the chief executives and the team here at the CA who've really worked hard. This basically is the framework in which, in the future, I will be held accountable, but by which I can hold people here in this organisation accountable for delivery. So that's the aim of it, and it really is important to us because we've only got 3 years, as we know, this time. We should have had 4, but we've got 3 years to deliver on that manifesto, and I'm determined to ensure that we'll deliver this in its entirety, because we delivered the last one in its entirety too. So if there aren't any questions, can we agree the recommendations as set out on page 17, please?
Agreed, Chair.
Thank you all for that. Brilliant. 6 is John's going to take us through the Combined Authority's Revenue and Capital Outturn report for 2020-21.
Thank you, Mayor and members. As we reported throughout the year, 2020-21 was significantly influenced by the pandemic, and in particular the impact of local lockdowns and social distancing on public transport and public transport revenues. And while we received some compensation for some of these losses in Q4, it remained a very challenging year. As you know, many of these challenges remain, and there's significant uncertainty still around the future shape of public transport, in particular with COVID influencing future patterns of work and leisure. Equally, there are significant other pressures on the Combined Authority to assist in the social and economic recovery of the city region in the ways just described in the previous item, because the budget needs to underpin the ambitions described in the corporate plan. So there'll be some tough decisions, I think, for the CA to take in the months ahead in order to support recovery whilst remaining on a sustainable financial footing. On the capital side, you'll see that there were some significant project delays related to the pandemic again, particularly around our large £500 million rolling stock project, where various European lockdowns impacted on manufacture and supply chains, and also travel restrictions hampered the project last year. So significant amounts of spend last year has been deferred into the current financial year. A lot more information will be considered by Audit and Governance when they consider the draft statement of accounts for 2020-21. I think that's on Wednesday. But in the meantime, I'm happy to answer any questions members may have.
Any questions for John? I'll just pick up on two sentences. One of them said some compensation for some of the losses, which is absolutely true. Remember, Rishi Sunak said, whatever it takes. Well, we didn't get that. And then the second bit is that there's still some tough decisions for us to take, and that's for us in the future, because we obviously have to balance the budget. And at some stage, we're going to have to come back and revisit this, aren't we? Because we need to find ways, mechanisms in which we can do that. So if those recommendations are agreed, are set out on page 55, is that okay with the leaders? Agreed. Item 7 is the response to the report by ourselves, the Liverpool City Region Town Centres Commission. So, Councillor Williamson, you're going to take us through this item.
Thank you, Chair. This report presents the Combined Authority's response to the Town Centre Commission's report, published in spring this year. The Commission was established by the Metro Mayor at the beginning of 2020 to analyse town centres across the city region and to make recommendations to support their long-term sustainability and to maximise their role and value to our local residents. The Commission's report covered from the impacts of the pandemic. We know that town centres will be different in the future, and the recommendations offer an opportunity to set out a really positive role for our town centres, one that sees them to continue to play a key role in the lives of our local residents, in providing the services they need, but also particularly in driving an inclusive community. The Combined Authority's response to these recommendations are set out in Appendix 1 of this report. The majority of the recommendations are accepted and will inform future working. Some of the Commission's recommendations, however, are outside the remit of the Combined Authority and local authorities. Where appropriate, these will be used for lobbying of the government. Appendix 2 of this report provides examples of good town centre practice and initiatives funded by the Mayoral Town Centres Fund in each of our local authorities. And I'm grateful to colleagues for all the work that they've done in providing these great examples. I would therefore move the recommendations in paragraph 2 on page 83, that the Combined Authority A, welcome the publication of the Liverpool City Region Town Centres Commission report. B, approve the responses to the recommendations of the Town Centres Commission report as set out in Appendix 1, and note the examples of good practice being undertaken by local authorities in the Liverpool City Region, designed to promote and support the sustainability of their town centres. Thank you.
Thank you. Very helpful. Any questions for Jeanette? No? Okay, so can we agree those recommendations as Councillor Williamson has just outlined? Item 8 is our adult education budget report, where we're seeking approval for our commissioning plan. And Councillor Whitley, who's the Deputy Portfolio Holder, I'm hoping has joined us. She has, yes, she's there. Welcome. Another baptism of fire. Welcome, and over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Rotherham. Yes, it is a baptism of fire, really. But anyway, this paper sets out the commissioning plan for the City Region adult education budget for the 5-year period 2022 to 2027. And the plan builds on the experience of the first cycle of delivery. The total budget for this academic year, 21-22, is £55.5 million. Many of the same principles from the first commissioning cycle will continue, including alignment with our skills strategy outcomes, safeguarding community learning, and allocating funding to grant funding colleges and local authorities, and procuring provision from other organisations. Approximately 15 million will be available to competitively tender in the next round of the AEB contracts. The next commissioning cycle will cover a 5-year period, as I've just mentioned. This will enable a longer-term partnership approach to develop with procured providers, help to provide some financial stability in what has been a difficult period of delivery, whilst recognising the level of resource required to undertake procurement on this scale. The National Skills Fund Level 3 audit offer, adult offer, delegated to the Combined Authority, will be included in the commissioning approach alongside devolved AEB. Devolution has provided a fantastic opportunity to implement changes to AEB and the way it was previously commissioned and paid for on a national basis. There were a number of flexibilities that were introduced in the current commissioning cycle that will remain or will be enhanced, including enhancing the current low-wage pilot to include learners earning under the real living wage threshold. This will be updated annually. Continuing the test and learn process, widening this out to contract for service providers, and to test new ways of working and delivery. Creation of new skills programmes and learning aims to meet the needs of employers. Finally, on timescales, formal procurement will be launched in the autumn of 2021. We expect the tender process will be concluded by March 2022, and subsequent recommendations for allocations for grant-funded providers and procured contracts for service providers. I recommend this report and its recommendations to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whitley. Excellent first contribution, and some areas of best practice that we can see on our screens. Hopefully you can too. If there are any particularly difficult and technical questions for Councillor Whitley, she'd be delighted to. No, Aileen's in the chamber, so Aileen will answer any questions that we have. Anybody got anything on that item? No, if we can move on then. So if we can agree the recommendations on page 103, please. Item 9 is a report that sets out the DFT proposed process for applications to the Active Travel Fund, and Councillor Robinson is going to take us through this report.
Yeah, thanks for that, Steve. As you just mentioned, effectively the report takes us through the proposed process of how we wish to apply to the Department for Transport for their active travel capital funding that is available, and it seeks delegated authority for myself as portfolio holder in consultation with the head of paid service to submit our bid on behalf of the city region before the deadline on the 9th of August. At the moment, we're finalising the proposals with officers from across all 6 of our districts, and all of the work is being done in-house. We're not incurring any consultancy fees. We're doing this in a very, very efficient manner. In terms of putting forward our application, the government is being very prescriptive in terms of what we need to do to be successful. We have to make sure that kind of our proposals are in line with the gear change guidance report that the Department for Transport issued, very much focusing on high quality cycling and walking infrastructure that segregates cyclists and pedestrians from general traffic. So in effect, white lines on roads would not be funded. We also need to make sure that our plans are fully in line with our local cycling and walking infrastructure plan and the network plans that the Combined Authorities agreed at previous meetings. It's equally important that we do lots of very detailed community consultation as part of our applications to make sure that what we're putting forward as projects have genuine broad local support and work for all users in a local area. And equally, we need to make sure that there is leader support for each of the projects that are proposed in each of the 6 districts. That is something that the government are specifying. We also need to make sure that we're focusing on converting car trips to walking and cycling as a large part of the outcomes that we are targeting as part of our proposals, and tackling poor health and health disparities, because obviously walking and cycling is a great way of dealing with the obesity crisis that we often face. Equally as well, we need to make sure that in our proposals the maximum number of residents are benefiting from them. Now, as it's a competitive fund, there is no indication of exactly how much funding we are likely to receive, but last year we actually got £10 million from a very good and visionary bid developed in collaboration across all 6 districts, and we will be targeting a similar allocation this time round, with some of the things that we're pulling together across all 6 districts include high quality segregated cycling lanes, school streets to protect our young people as they're going to and from places of education, and low traffic neighbourhoods in each of our 6 districts. As part of the funding application, we're also going to be putting forward expressions of interest for what are called mini Holland schemes, very much focusing on active travel at a kind of a wider community basis. And there's been some strong interest both in Liverpool, Sefton and St Helens for that. Equally, there is also the ability to express an interest in a GP and social prescribing model, where effectively GPs could prescribe cycling to people that are suffering both with physical and mental health as a very effective way of helping address those health disparities. And there's been some really encouraging interest in Sefton and St Helens for us to do that. So that gives the detail of what we're applying for. I think the final point I wanted to make, if I may, Mayor, is just to sort of say a big thank you to all of our 6 leaders and yourself across the city region for your leadership on this issue. We know that whilst there is broad support for kind of improving cycling and walking across the region, we know that from the Bike Life report that we commissioned. We also know that occasionally these issues can be sensitive in local communities, and I have to pay tribute to all of those leaders that are working closely with their communities to step them through these issues to make sure that what we propose works for everyone. And that is in diametric opposition to some Tory politicians locally who, quite frankly, in my view, just want to play political games, aren't serious about treating cyclists and pedestrians as equal road users, and frankly, aren't serious about dealing with the climate emergency as well. So wanted to put that on record because I think all of our 6 leaders and yourself are doing a great job on this agenda. Thank you.
Thanks, Liam, and that is on record. Any questions for Liam? Yeah, Jeanette?
It's just more a comment, really. Thank you for that, Liam, and thank you for the work that you've done with me and my ward colleagues in Liscard, which fitted precisely the description that you've just given around politics being played by opposition politicians, and to the detriment, I think, of residents who are interested in active travel and cycle lanes. And it's incumbent on us to ensure that we do continue the consultation and we do make it work for everyone, and not just scaremongering. And so I really appreciate all of the work that you've done with me. Thank you.
And it's fantastic that the good people of Liscard don't listen to some of those scare stories and returning Daisy last night in a by-election. Okay, with that said, can we agree the recommendations are set out on page 137, please? 10 is SIF again, but it's our race equality hub, and everybody will be aware of the context of this, you know, the murder of George Floyd and the disproportionate impact of COVID on Black, Asian and minority ethnic people acted as a catalyst really for global protests against racial inequality and injustice. More recently though, the targeted attacks on Black footballers from the English national team for racist abuse that's gone on in society. It's continued to highlight how the scourge of discrimination and racism continues to be a significant factor in the experiences of many of our Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities. And in March, the Liverpool City Region Combined Authority issued a declaration of intent setting out its commitment to address racial inequality. The report presented to members today to invest in establishing a race equality hub represents a tangible demonstration of our commitment against the supporting the declaration of intent to address the inequalities experienced by those communities. And the development of the hub has emerged from substantial evidence gathering, from research and engagement with key partners and stakeholders that allowed us to better understand the scale of the problem and to identify potential solutions. Now, over 300 people from those communities and in backgrounds of all age groups were involved in this engagement process. The hub will provide a bold, ambitious, exciting and innovative approach to how racial inequality will be addressed, and it's something that builds upon the city region's reputation for social justice and equality. It'll provide a long-term single point of reference that will enable Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities to participate in the widest range of career, employment and training opportunities. So phase one investment is going to focus on the development of a strategic partnership and the design and development of the hub's operating model and legal entity. Bit technical, but we have to do that obviously then to ensure that we do spend the money appropriately. We will co-design solutions with communities and stakeholders to allow the hub to deliver its services and interventions in a way that best meets the needs of those communities across the whole of the Liverpool City region. Now, subject to that phase design process being approved, phase two will see the establishment of a new entity, likely to be a social enterprise, which will commission and deliver positive action services to support Black, Asian and minority ethnic people in the labour market. And this will include business support, because we very clearly got feedback saying that this was important, training, leadership development, recruitment, support and mentorship services. So a whole plethora of different services that we'll provide. The great social and economic benefits of the hub, though, can be about changing things and challenging the status quo. They are achievable, but will only be realised with the support of the widest possible range of partners and stakeholders, including public and private sector employers, as well as all those communities right the way across the whole city region. And if anybody wants, Aileen can provide feedback from the external investment panel and answer any questions that anybody may have. But this is of its time, isn't it? And it can't be another stick and plaster attempt to sort out institutionalised racism and structural discrimination. We need to do stuff ourselves within our own organisation. We're doing that. Catherine's leading on that. We also then want to act as an exemplar, and we want the city region to be leading in the country on this issue. And it's something that will not just go away. Are there any questions for Aileen? No, if there aren't any questions, can we agree the recommendations as set out on page 157, please?
Agreed, Chair.
Thanks for your support on that. 11 is SIF, which is Destination Marketing. Councillor Wharton, you're going to take us through this report.
Thanks, Steve. Well, this paper seeks combined authority approval for the grant of £1.5 million funding to the Growth Platform's Destination Marketing Project, which is part of the Liverpool City Region Visitor Economy Strategy. It is intended to create a system for improved market intelligence, evidence-targeted marketing campaigns, and then a sustainable funding model for future campaigns by seeking contributions to programmes. These support measures underpin future activity in the visitor economy, which is one of the success stories in the city region, which has been severely impacted by COVID-19. The total ask of £1.5 million aims to provide support and confidence to the private sector to enable their contributions to follow in year 2 and 3 of the programme, when economic conditions are expected to have improved. The proposed package will be delivered in 3 phases. Phase 1 will focus on creating a new CRM system which will allow an assessment of visitor numbers, origin, length of stay and purpose of visit, which will support the later stages. Phase 2 will use marketing campaigns to reinvigorate visitor interest in the LCR post-pandemic. And Phase 3 will build a new sustainable funding approach which secures funding from the organisations that benefit from the proactive campaigns, which will be evidenced by the new IT system. The External Investment Panel also recommended a simplified governance structure which will be agreed with the Growth Platform to identify the lead responsible bodies for each stage. I commend the recommendations to approve the proposed approach and the funding request.
Excellent. Any questions for Councillor Wharton? Just to let you know that our visitor economy is worth about £5 billion to the economy and employs around 54,000 people. So it is a significant sector for us. I think with your consent, I'll write again to visit England and visit Britain to see what they can do to encourage more people to come to our area. Obviously, we've got the knock-on effect of UNESCO's ridiculous decision on Liverpool's World Heritage status. I'm not certain it'll have a huge detrimental impact on the numbers of people who come here. But when people do come to the UK, I've consistently said, when I was a member of the DCMS Select Committee in Parliament, that more people should be encouraged to come to areas like ours. You can use the city region as a staging post to go to all sorts of other areas and day trips out all over the place. So why wouldn't it get equal status to that of London, which is my rhetorical question. Okay, so we will be writing those letters. Officers will be now furiously scribbling down on pieces of paper what I've just said. Can we agree the recommendations as set out on page 211 of the report, please?
Agreed.
Item 12 is the development funding for transport pipelines, and we know how important this is, so I'll hand over to Councillor Robinson to talk us through this part of the business.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. And very simply and very briefly, the report is actually asking for the release of development funding for a number of priority transport projects, because often as the government makes us bid for a variety of funding pots, we have to make sure that our projects are appropriately developed to be successful in winning that funding. And effectively, we're looking for funding that would allow 20 projects to be brought forward to a good standard that could be candidates in our intra-city transport fund bid that will be going to government very soon. We're looking for £16.77 million. 5.6 million of that comes from the intra-city transport fund capacity fund that government are making available, but the majority of it, 11.17 million, actually comes from existing CA budgets. The 20 projects are listed in Appendix A of the report, and obviously if this report is agreed today, there will be quarterly updates coming back to the CA, updating members on progress accordingly.
Any questions for Liam? Just to obviously note and thank the government for its pre-development funding, but this is significantly greater than what they've offered us, so we need to spend some further funding ourselves. Really important to us that we get this pipeline. If everybody's content, can we agree the recommendations are set out on page 255, please? 13 is changes to what's been previously agreed in regard to SIF projects. Aileen?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Changes to SIF projects above a threshold, either in funding or in delivery timescales, are a decision of the Combined Authority. This report requests CA approval to changes to 5 Strategic Investment Fund projects. 3 projects request extension of time only. 1 project request is reallocation of underspent funds together with an extension of time, and 1 project requests increase in funding. The 3 projects which require an extension of time are the Urban Traffic Control Project. It's managed by Sefton Council and delivery has been impacted by COVID. It's noted that the project is being delivered with £200,000 worth of savings from originally approved. The second project that requires an extension of time is Rotunda College refurbishment, which has been impacted by water ingress when undergoing roof works. The cost impact is subject to ongoing discussions with the insurer and contractor. The third project is refurbishment of the Cambridge Road Adult Education Centre, which has also been impacted by COVID and the complexity of work to the Victorian building. In respect of reallocation of underspend, Sefton Council were awarded 998,500 in 2019 as part of the redevelopment of the Strand. The Council now requests that 280,000 of underspend on that project is reallocated to further consultancy work on improving the Strand and Bittle Town Centre and the necessary time to undertake this. And finally, St Helens Council request an increase in funding of 532,000 for St Helens Connectivity Project to cover the full project costs that were already detailed in the original business plan. Thank you.
Any questions for Aileen? Can we agree the recommendations on page 255? 14 is SIF again, but this time, Councillor Williamson, you're going to take us through this report. Very exciting.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair. The Combined Authority's vision is to be a fairer, stronger and cleaner city region where no one's left behind. Having a growing business base that provides good quality jobs for people in every community is central to this vision. We know from our local industrial strategy and recovery plan that the city region has research strength in health and life sciences, but we need to do more to use that strength to grow more businesses. We believe that the Liverpool city region can do more to support businesses to recover and grow beyond COVID-19, to improve the attractiveness of the city region as a place to do business and increase the social value local businesses deliver by embedding community wealth building approaches. The project in this paper will directly respond to this ambition by providing services and proof of concept funding to support high growth potential startups and spin outs across the city region. This will directly support the translation of the research coming from our world-leading centres of research and scientific discovery, such as SciTech Daresbury, Materials Innovation Factory at University of Liverpool, and Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine for Infectious Diseases. In time, this support will attract further investment into research and development to drive innovation, increasing the global competitiveness of the Liverpool city region, whilst at the same time creating local jobs for local people. The paper also sets out plans to create a central research and technology organisation to drive research and development spend across the city region and attract additional private investments into homegrown ventures. The initial focus will be on health and life sciences as a recognised strength of the city region, but the Phase 2 proposal will allow this model to expand into other sectors. Mr Mayor, the total ask is for 10.475 million from the Combined Authority to deliver both phases of activity. And finally, the project has been co-designed with key partners and will complement and integrate with the existing businesses and innovation support landscape in the city region. Thank you.
Wow, really exciting. Any questions for Councillor Williamson? Can we agree the recommendations are set out on page 273, please? Item 15 is just some tidying up decision-making powers for the Liverpool City region. Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Colleagues, I'm proud to say that this next report provides an update on another excellent project which is making a difference to the people across the city region. We re-established our One Public Estate partnership late last year to bring together public sector partners and make sure that on behalf of our residents we are getting the most out of our public buildings. Having our partnership board in place allows us to access additional funding from the government to explore creative ways of sharing buildings and assets. This approach is already helping to make sure residents in Halton will have more choice in accessing NHS services. And as you'll see in the report, the proposed recommendations will allow us to keep pursuing new ideas and opportunities in the future so that we can make the best use of what we have as a city region and continue to deliver high quality services which will provide value for money to our communities. If it's okay with you, Mr Mayor, I'll hand over to Eileen Jones, who will talk into more detail about the report. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Morgan. The paper asks for approval in 4 key areas. One is the role of the Combined Authority as lead authority and accountable body for the City Region One Public Estate Partnership Board. Secondly, it also seeks delegated authority to myself as part of my responsibilities in consultation with the Executive Director of Corporate Services and Chief Legal and Monitoring Officer to exercise the Combined Authority's responsibilities as lead authority to implement decisions taken by the One Public Estate Partnership Board in accordance with its terms of reference. Thirdly, decisions of the One Public Estate Partnership Board that involve an allocation of funding in excess of £150,000 or significantly impact one or more of our local authority areas will be further approved by a published decision in consultation with Councillor Morgan as portfolio holder. And finally, to note the repurposing of funds for 2 projects in the city region, one in Wirral, Birkenhead Waterfront, and the other in Sefton and Bittlestrand Health and Wellbeing Centre. These decisions were taken by the Combined Authority's Chief Executive on the 28th of May. Thank you.
Thanks, Aileen. And I think what this does is demonstrate the benefits of having a combined authority, because a lot of this is about pots of money that individual local authorities can't bid in for, and that we've lost out on in the past. And people often say, why does such and such an area have whatever it might be that they're identifying? And it's because they've been working together. You can see the tangible benefits. I think more and more people on the doorstep are starting to understand that devolution is a force for good. So this is another great example, Councillor Morgan, of us working genuinely as 6 local authorities and the combined authority all pulling in the same direction. Any questions for Graham? Now, can we agree the recommendations on page 297, please? 16 is a report which seeks approval to accept additional grant funds from ESF and from what's called the Youth Employment Initiative. And it's for the Ways of Work project. I understand that the original submission request was for £6 million of additional grant to extend the 1.3 activity. And since the publication of the agenda, of this agenda, a further £6,538 million as of additional grant fund has been received to extend what's called the 1.1 activity across the entire Liverpool city region, and that will enable the current Ways to Work project to continue until the 30th of September 2023. I'm sure, colleagues, that you will support this. It might come as a surprise to some people that we're still benefiting from European structural funding, even though we've now left the European Union, but these additional funds are very welcome to our area, believe me. Are there any questions or comments for Aileen? Can we agree the recommendations on page 305, please? Yeah, I've just been told by our monitoring officer that that does take into account and note the additional £6,538,105. Do you want that as well? Yeah, I think that was unanimous. 17, John Fogarty has left the chamber. This report provides a brief update on governance matters and proposals to appoint to a number of company directorship positions. And Jill, you're going to take us through this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The report contains a number of governance recommendations for you on page 311. If I may, I'd like to group those recommendations into 3 areas. The first recommendation is to note the work that Frank Rogers has done for his considerable contributions to the Mersey Tunnels, Mersey Travel and ultimately to the Combined Authority over his many years of service. The next group of recommendations, recommendations B through to G, all relate to changes that need to be made following Frank and another staff member's departure from the organisation, and they relate to both Mersey Travel and to a number of subsidiary organisations, and its various appointments that they will now be appointed to as a result of this report, if it is agreed. The final recommendation at H relates to the Appointments and Disciplinary Committee and sets out a proposed change about to whom within the organisation the Appointments and Disciplinary Committee processes will apply. With your indulgence, Chair, I would like to suggest an additional recommendation be added to this report. The additional recommendation seeks the temporary co-option of Councillor Robinson onto the membership of the Appointments and Disciplinary Committee so that he may participate in key appointments moving forward for the organisation of the Combined Authority. Chair, if I can take any questions or assist the Chamber any further.
Thanks, Jill. Any questions for the Monitoring Officer? No. Can we, with the additional recommendation that Councillor Liam Robinson is temporarily added to the Appointments and Disciplinary Committee, can we agree those recommendations on page 311, please?
Agreed, Chair.
Okay, we're on to 18, which is public question time, and truly we had none.
That's correct, Metro Mayor. Yes, we haven't
And
received
petitions and statements on 19.
any. And correct, yeah, we haven't received any.
Okay, we're going to go into an urgent item of business. So the following item is deemed to be an urgent item pursuant to Part 4, Section A of the Constitution, and that's to enable consideration to be given to the matters set out in the report, namely that delegated approval is sought to submit the comprehensive spending review report ahead of the next meeting of the LCR Combined Authority. Kirsty, who hopefully she is on screen, Kirsty will take us through that report.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So, yes, the government is due to carry out a comprehensive spending review in the autumn, and this provides the opportunity for organisations to submit representations to inform the development of national policy and spending priorities for the next 3-year period. We'll work with officers in constituent local authorities to develop a submission which reflects their priorities as outlined in your manifesto, local priorities highlighted in the draft local industrial strategy, economic recovery plan, and other local priorities that have come to the fore, but also national priorities for investment, together with our proposition as to how we could better contribute to national priorities through the delivery of place-based funding allocations. It's likely that submissions for the spending review will need to be submitted to government at the end of August in advance of the next full Combined Authority meeting. So the paper seeks delegated authority to prepare and submit a submission to Treasury on behalf of the Liverpool City Region Combined Authority, and it also asks for delegated agreement for us to submit that on your behalf. Thank you.
And this is purely a timing issue, of course, because of the CSR. Is that okay? Are we all comfortable? Yes. Can we agree the recommendations set out on page 1 of the supplementary agenda pack? Okay. Just before we conclude, first of all, on behalf of all the leaders and myself, can we wish Mayor Jo Anderson a speedy recovery? And now we're going to go into a short video which demonstrates the achievements of the Combined Authority over the last 4 years, and then we'll go into what's called Part 2. But play the video.
Authority are bringing that wealth of innovation and ingenuity together, and I think that's really, really powerful.
Yeah, it says it all, really, doesn't it? What a vibrant place we all live in, and for once we're looking to the future, aren't we? Even in a post-COVID world, a post-Brexit world, with some hope that things can be better for us all. So the great stuff that we do often goes unrecorded. At least it's there on the internet for posterity. Okay, so with that, it's recommended that due to the content of the next report, that it's considered as exempt in the absence of the press and public. And we've only got one member of the public, and there's no press here. So they are about to leave the room. And so the Combined Authority has agreed that the next item will be considered in the absence of the press and the public due to the information that it contains. Can I therefore ask that anyone sat in the public gallery and those attending remotely now leave the meeting whilst these items are considered, and can all filming cease?